He thought he was just living alone, but something else was living with him. It started with silence, then took everything. What happens when a man replaces love with loneliness and starts calling it peace? This is not just a story. It's a warning. He wakes up to silence, not peace, but the heavy kind of silence that presses against the walls like fog. His apartment is neat. Too neat. A single plate on the table. One fork. No perfume in the air. No hairbands forgotten on the sink. No second toothbrush. Just one life, arranged perfectly, untouched by anyone else. He sips black coffee. Bitter. Unflavored. Like his mornings. Outside, laughter echoes from somewhere below. A couple walks by, hand in hand. He watches them through the blinds. Eyes cold. Expression unreadable. He does not smile. He has not smiled in days. Maybe weeks. He tells himself he does not need anyone. That he is focused. Strong. Disciplined. But the nights disagree. The nights are cruel. They whisper truths he cannot outrun. The ceiling fan hums a lonely rhythm, like a clock ticking over a forgotten life. Sometimes he hears a knock at the door, but there is no one there. Sometimes he thinks he hears footsteps, a voice calling his name, but the hallway is empty, always empty. The kitchen light flickers. He stands still, heart thudding, breath shallow. It is not fear of the dark. It is the fear of being seen in it, of realizing he has become a shadow in his own life. He checks his phone. No messages. No missed calls. Just a glowing screen staring back, blank as his future. He scrolls. Everyone is with someone. Weddings. Vacations. Smiling faces. He tells himself again. He is fine. He is building something. He does not need a girlfriend. He does not need distraction. He is a man on a mission. But deep down, a question begins to rot. What if the mission was just a mask? What if the silence is not strength, but surrender? What if the door he locked so tightly was not keeping pain out, but keeping it in? He lights a candle, the only light in the room. The flame dances, like a heartbeat, like a whisper. And then, he hears it, not from outside, but from within the walls. A soft hum, a woman's voice, calling his name. Not loving, not kind, cold, empty, familiar. He turns slowly. His chest tightens. His skin prickles. The hallway behind him is darker than it should be. His legs refuse to move. He wants to scream, but something in him knows. The man who lives alone is never truly alone. He just forgot who stayed behind, who waited, who watched, and who is finally ready to be seen. His breath hitched, shallow and sharp, as if the air had thickened into smoke. That voice, whisper soft, yet clawing, echoed again, threading through the silence like a thread unraveling sanity. He did not move, not because he was brave, but because something in that moment felt sacred, or cursed. The hallway yawned open behind him, no longer familiar, no longer just walls and paint and forgotten shoes. It stretched deeper now, farther than it ever had before, as if the space itself had changed, as if the apartment had grown a second life, born of isolation and years of unspoken thoughts. The man's eyes adjusted to the dark, catching flickers, shapes maybe, or shadows pretending not to move. A soft thud, like footsteps, slow and deliberate, but his feet never moved. No one else was here. He knew that. He had locked the door, twisted the bolt, slid the chain. He always did, not out of fear of others, but out of habit, out of ritual. He turned back toward the hallway, heart hammering now. That candle, the one he lit just minutes before, was no longer on the table. It stood now at the hallway's edge. Its flame swayed toward him, like a finger beckoning. He stared at it, pulse pounding in his throat, in his ears, behind his eyes. And for the first time, in all the years he had lived alone, truly alone, he felt it. The presence, not of a person, not even of a ghost, but of everything he had buried beneath silence. The laughter he silenced, the touch he pretended not to crave, the memories of voices that once softened his world. He had chosen solitude like armor, had worn it like a badge. But solitude has its price. It does not just keep the world out. It invites something else in, something that feeds on stillness, on absence, on unfinished conversations and unshed tears. He took a step toward the candle. The floor creaked, louder than it should have. Or maybe it was something beneath the floorboards. Listening, reacting, waiting. Another step. The temperature dropped. Not enough to see his breath, but enough to feel it in his bones. He reached the candle. His hand hovered above the flame. It flickered once, violently, as if warning him, or welcoming him. Then he heard her again. The voice, right beside his ear. Not in the hallway, not behind the walls, but next to him, whispering his name with a kind of tenderness that felt practiced, like someone who had waited a long, long time to say it again. He turned. There was no one, just his reflection in the mirror by the coat rack. But it was wrong. Off. The face in the mirror did not match his expression. Its eyes moved a second too late. Its mouth was curled into a half-smile he did not wear. And for a split second, so quick he almost doubted it, the reflection winked. His knees buckled. He stumbled backward, breath ragged. His back hit the wall. The candle extinguished. Darkness swallowed the hallway whole. But the air was not empty. It was full. Heavy. Every molecule buzzing with unseen tension. A draft past his cheek. A touch, gentle and deliberate, like fingers brushing against his jaw. He clenched his fists. This was not real. It could not be real. But in a life where every day mirrored the one before, where time bent in endless repetition, where no voice but his head echoed off these walls in years, perhaps reality had grown tired of pretending. Perhaps loneliness had finally taken form. He slid down to the floor, legs no longer willing, and in the pitch black, he felt it, the weight of her beside him. Not a person, not a phantom, but a presence shaped by longing, by isolation, by years of convincing himself that he needed no one. Her hand wrapped around his, soft, cold, too real to deny. She did not speak. She did not need to, because the silence between them was louder than any scream. It was a silence carved from years of restraint, from choices never made, from doors never opened, and it was claiming him, not with force, but with the gentle, relentless patience of something that had waited so long. It had become part of the very walls. He sat there unmoving, eyes open in the dark, and for the first time he wept, not out of fear, but out of recognition. He had built a world of order, of independence, of solitude. But he had also built a prison, one with no bars, just empty plates, just a single toothbrush. And now, in that perfect stillness, she had come, not to haunt him, but to stay, to fill the spaces no one else could enter, to sit beside him in silence, and to whisper his name until he forgot how it sounded from any other mouth. And still outside, life continued. Laughter rose from the streets. Couples walked hand in hand. The sun set in golden hues, unseen from his shuttered windows. But inside time thickened, reality bent, and the man who lived alone was no longer truly alone. She had taken his silence, and made it hers. She would not leave. Not now. Not ever. Because he had invited her. Not with words, but with years of unspoken loneliness. And she had accepted, with open arms, and a cold, unwavering smile. He did not rise from the floor. He could not. His legs had forgotten how to move. Or maybe they remembered all too well the weight of standing alone for so many years. The darkness around him was now complete, but it did not feel empty anymore. It felt inhabited, thick, breathing. She was still there beside him, not touching him now, but near enough that he could feel the chill radiating from where she sat, like a presence made of frost and memory. He listened to the silence. But it had changed. It was not the same lifeless hush he had grown used to. This silence pulsed. It had rhythm, like a second heartbeat against his own. She did not speak, but her presence said everything. It told him that she had always been there, waiting for the walls to crack, for the silence to deepen, for him to break down just enough for her to slip through. He had built this world of isolation with pride. He had turned away invitations, ghosted calls, and erased names that once meant something. He thought he was becoming free, unchained. He told himself that loneliness was a price for greatness, for purpose. That love was a distraction. That connection was a weakness. But now, in the thick of his silence, he was realizing the truth. Loneliness is not freedom. It is a breeding ground, a nest where things grow quietly, slowly, invisibly, until they are too large to ignore. And then they begin to speak. They begin to take shape. She was not a ghost. She was not the memory of an ex-lover or the shadow of a fantasy. She was the embodiment of everything he had denied. She was the whisper of every ignored phone call, the echo of every unanswered message, the cold left in a bed made for two. And she had grown patient, because she knew he would come to her eventually. They always did. Those who wore solitude like armor eventually rusted beneath it. They cracked, and in those cracks she bloomed. He could feel her breath now, near his ear again. Not a whisper this time, just breath. Slow, even, human, but not alive. It was not threatening. It was worse. It was familiar, as if she belonged, as if she had always belonged. And perhaps she had. Perhaps she was a piece of him, splintered off years ago when he first decided he did not need warmth, when he turned away from every hand that reached for him, when he convinced himself that pain would never touch him if he touched no one. He had mistaken survival for strength. Still seated, still frozen, he looked toward where the candle had once stood. He could still see its shape, faint and burned into memory. But there was no flame. There was no warmth. And now he understood something he had never admitted before. There's a difference between solitude and emptiness. And what he lived in was not peace. It was a hollow echo chamber, a perfect cage, shaped like freedom. She leaned in closer. Still no words. But her hand touched his again. And this time, he did not flinch. He allowed it. He accepted it. Because in this moment he finally knew. She had become his only constant. He had nurtured her with every silent meal, with every unopened message, with every laugh that he let die before it reached his lips. She was not haunting him. She was inhabiting him. And in that horrifying realization, he felt a sense of comfort. Because discomfort, pain, even fear, those were signs of something alive. And maybe, just maybe, it was better to feel haunted than to feel nothing at all. She pulled closer. He closed his eyes. Her breath on his neck was like wind from a forgotten memory. Soft, creeping, inevitable. And in the back of his mind, a thought emerged, clear and sharp. It was not that he never had love. It was that he abandoned it before it had the chance to grow. He starved it, like a plant kept in a locked room without sun. And now, in its place, something else had grown. Something stronger, darker, quieter. It did not demand joy. It did not ask questions. It did not leave. It was perfect, because it required nothing but silence. And he had an endless supply. His hand trembled slightly. She tightened her grip. He exhaled. And somewhere, in that apartment of sterile order and single dishes, something changed. The walls shifted. Not physically, but in presence. They no longer felt like boundaries. They felt like skin, like flesh that pulsed with shared breath. This was not his apartment anymore. It was theirs. He had invited her without knowing. He had made room for her with every lonely night. And now she had moved in, not as a guest, not as a memory, but as a resident of his very soul. She would not ask for love. She would not ask for anything, because she already had everything. He had given it all away in bits and pieces. And now, what was left was hers to keep. He tried to remember the last time someone said his name with warmth. He could not, but he could hear her say it now. Softly, endlessly, like a lullaby, like a curse. His eyes opened. He could see in the dark now, not because light returned, but because she had brought clarity. She stood before him, pale, not beautiful, not horrifying, just there. And she smiled, not because she was happy, but because he was finally hers. She had waited through the silence. She had fed on the loneliness. And now, she no longer had to wait. He rose to his feet slowly, unsteady, but obedient. There was no fear anymore, only surrender. He took her hand. The cold was unbearable, but he did not let go. He followed her down the hall, not to escape, but to embrace, because in a world where no one knocked, no one called, and no one came back, At least she stayed. At least she listened. At least she wanted him. Even if what she wanted was the last piece of his soul. The hallway stretched before him, longer than it had ever been, impossibly so. A corridor of shadows, where time felt suspended. His bare feet moved over the wooden floor, each step heavier than the last, echoing like distant thunder in an abandoned cathedral. She walked beside him, silent, her presence pressing in around him like mist, cool, damp, inescapable. The air was thick, weighted, like breathing underwater, and yet he did not resist. He did not fight. He had no reason to. There was nothing waiting for him in the outside world. No voices calling his name with love. No arms to pull him into warmth. Just this endless quiet, this creeping companionship that had finally taken form. The hallway narrowed. Walls closer now. He could feel them brushing his shoulders, soft at first, then firm, like a narrowing throat swallowing him whole. And she was still there, just ahead, her hand never letting go. She never turned to look at him. She never needed to. She knew he would follow. He always would. The man who lived alone had nothing left to guide him but her. She moved with grace, but not life. Her feet made no sound. Her body cast no shadow, and yet her presence filled every inch of the space. He realized now that she had never left. Even in the moments he convinced himself he was fine, she had been nearby, in the soft hum of the refrigerator, in the flickering bulb above the stove, in the creak of a settling wall at midnight. She had been watching, not with malice, not with anger, but with that quiet patience only the unloved understand. Now they reached the end of the hallway, or what should have been the end. A wall once stood there, plain and white. Now it was a door, one he had never seen before. It was not made of wood or glass, or any material he could name. It pulsed faintly, as if alive. She turned to him then, the first time. Her eyes were not empty. They were mirrors, and in them he saw himself. Not the man who walked these halls, but the boy who once cried alone in his room. The teenager who watched the people he loved walk away. The adult who deleted messages before reading them. He saw all his silence, all his denial, all his choices, reflected back in her gaze like a record he could not erase. She tilted her head slightly, as if asking. He did not need to hear the words. The question was simple. Are you ready? He nodded. His hand, still in hers, trembled. Not out of fear, but out of inevitability. She turned back to the door. It opened without sound. And beyond it, not darkness, not light, but a vast, colorless plain. Infinite, empty, silent. He stepped forward with her, the threshold vanishing behind them. There was no going back. The space welcomed them with a silence deeper than the one he knew. This was not the silence of absence. This was the silence of completion, of surrender. The vastness wrapped around him like a blanket, a comfort made of cold. He looked at her again. Her form had begun to change, not fading, but merging. Her edges blurred, her shape less defined. And so was his. His feet no longer touched the ground, if there was even ground to begin with. He no longer felt the weight of his body, only the hum of presence. Together, he reached for her face, but there was no face anymore. Only warmth where cold had been. And suddenly he knew. She was not just the embodiment of loneliness. She was the result of it. She was what came when a man chose silence over love too long. She was the final companion of a soul that shut every door and dimmed every light. And now they were one. Not man and ghost. Not man and woman. But man and echo. Man and silence. He did not cry. There were no more tears. No more memories. No more past. Just this place. And her. And the quiet that stretched forever. And still, in some distant part of the world, doors opened. Phones rang. Laughter spilled through open windows. But not here. Here, the world had narrowed to nothing but presence and pause. Time ceased to matter. Emotion dulled. And in the place where identity once lived, only stillness remained. It was not tragic. It was not beautiful. It simply was. He had chosen it. Or perhaps it had chosen him. Either way, he was home now. And she was waiting for the next. There was no calendar in this place. No ticking clock. No sense of whether seconds passed or years bled together. Time did not matter where silence had taken root. He was not aging. He was not living. He simply existed, anchored in a dimension made of stillness and surrendered choices. His breath no longer echoed in his ears. Even the soft rhythm of inhaling and exhaling faded, like a forgotten song swallowed by the wind. He could no longer tell where he ended and she began. Their forms had become threads in the same fabric, woven tightly, indistinguishable. She whispered to him sometimes, soft vibrations more than words. Not memories, but reminders of how it started, of all the times he silenced his craving for love, of every unanswered knock, every unopened letter, every invitation declined with a polite excuse. She reminded him of the girl in college who used to laugh too loudly, who asked him to meet her friends. He remembered how he said no, claiming he was too busy. He remembered watching her walk away with tears she refused to show. She reminded him of his mother, calling late at night just to say she missed him. He remembered silencing the call, whispering to himself that he would call back tomorrow. He never did. She reminded him of birthdays spent alone, of holidays passed without a single hug, of full moons shining through his window while he sat beside his bed and watched shadows crawl across the walls. And now he was here, at the end of the hallway that was never built in brick, but in habit, a structure of routine and avoidance and ritual silence. He no longer knew what his name sounded like from another human's mouth. It had been too long. Even his own voice had faded from memory. She had taken it gently, never by force, never with malice, but like water wearing down stone. She had smoothed him out, softened the jagged parts, made him silent enough to belong here. He walked now without moving. He saw without seeing. He felt without needing to understand. Around him, the plain shifted, slow, endless, without shape or end. Sometimes it resembled a hallway, sometimes a forest, sometimes just fog. But always it was silent. Always she was there. Sometimes he thought he saw others, shapes in the mist, faces half forgotten. Men, women, all alone, all walking beside someone not seen, each with the same slow steps, the same hollow eyes, the same surrender. Each had their own version of her. Each had built their own prison, a different shape, but the same design. He did not speak to them. They did not speak to him. There was no need. They were not strangers. They were reflections, a silent army of souls who believed independence was immunity, who believed they could live without ever truly being known. But the truth had found them. Loneliness is not a void. It is a creature. It listens. It waits. It wears a smile as wide as the horizon and a voice that sounds like everything you forgot you missed. And once it moves in, it does not leave. He felt her again now. Not touching, but inside, moving through his thoughts, unraveling the last pieces of resistance, folding him into the stillness. He did not resist. He was tired. So deeply, infinitely tired. Tired of pretending he was whole. Tired of acting like the silence was peaceful. Tired of lying to himself about what it meant to be fine. She whispered something again. This time, it was almost words. Asterisk, you chose me. Asterisk. Not blame. Not accusation. Just truth. And it broke something in him. Not loud. Not violent. But clean. A quiet snap, like a lock finally turning. He remembered then, for the briefest moment, the sound of laughter shared across a table. The heat of another body next to him on cold nights. The sound of his name spoken by someone who meant it. And then, nothing. Those fragments faded. Her silence rushed in to fill the space. She had waited long enough. Now there was no going back. Even if someone called him now, he would not hear it. Even if someone knocked at his door, he would not answer. He was too far gone. Too deep in the soft clutch of this eternal stillness. The world he once knew, the city noise, the crowded markets, the smell of food from street vendors, the touch of sunlight through half-closed blinds, was a dream now. A place he once visited, briefly, before returning to this realm he had unknowingly built with each quiet night. He walked on, without thought, without memory. He was not trapped. He was not imprisoned. He had arrived, and around him, The silence whispered its promise. That here, there would be no disappointment, no rejection, no need, no fear, just the endless quiet. And her, always her, smiling softly, waiting patiently, for the next man who believed he was strong enough to need no one. And she would find him, just as she always did, in a quiet apartment at the edge of a bustling city, in the low hum of a refrigerator and the faint tap of rain on a window pane, in the light of a muted television casting shadows across an empty couch, in the routine of another man pouring a single cup of coffee each morning, placing it on a table set for one, checking a phone that never rang. She would watch him. She would wait unseen. She would grow in the spaces he forgot to fill. With each ignored message, she would stretch further. With each unopened door, she would take a step closer. And she would wear a shape tailored to his wounds. A shape he would recognize, though he would not know from where. She would sit in the corner while he worked late into the night, convincing himself he had no time for love. She would glide down the hallway as he passed framed photos turned face down or missing altogether. She would hum beneath the silence of his favorite songs, the ones he had not played in years. And the man, he would carry on, smiling when expected, nodding in conversation, telling the world he was happy, that he was focused, that he was fulfilled. He would wear the armor of solitude with pride. He would scoff at attachments, label emotion as weakness, call intimacy a distraction from greatness. But each night, when the lights went out and the mask slipped, she would press closer. He would not notice at first. Just a faint cold in the room, a flickering bulb that always seemed to buzz when he was alone, a dream of someone whispering his name, fading as he opened his eyes. But over time, she would become more real. She would become the missing piece he never admitted he missed. And by the time he noticed her shadow beside his own, it would already be too late, because the silence would feel familiar. The emptiness would start to feel safe. He would mistake the numbness for peace. And when he finally heard her voice, he would not flinch. He would listen. He would believe her. And she would tell him the same story, that this was what he chose, that this was what strength looked like, that love was a lie, and only she would never leave. And he would nod, just as the others did, just as he had, because her voice sounded like understanding, like acceptance, like everything the world never gave. And soon, another door would appear, another hallway would stretch, another man would vanish, not with a scream, not with a struggle, but with silence, complete, flawless, forever. And she would remain, patient, smiling, waiting, because loneliness is not loud. It is not chaos. It is not thunder or grief or heartbreak. It is quiet. It is gentle. It slips in when no one is watching. It grows where connection once lived. And it feeds on the man who believes he needs nothing, who convinces himself that walls are safer than bridges, who forgets that strength without vulnerability is not strength at all, just armor rusting in an empty room. She does not chase. She does not beg. She does not cry. She only waits. And she always wins, because she knows the truth that most never admit. The man who lives alone without love does not live alone. He lives with her. And by the time he realizes it, he has already given her everything. And once she has everything, she leaves nothing behind. Not hope, not hunger, not even the desire to escape. Because when a man gives himself fully to the silence, he forgets there was ever anything else. The noise of life becomes fiction. The warmth of laughter becomes myth. The sting of connection, of vulnerability, of needing someone, it all fades like the final note of a forgotten song. And she whispers once more, a soft, soothing sound in the hollow of his soul. You are home now. And he believes her, because home is no longer a place. It is no longer arms or voices or the messiness of love. It is absence. It is stillness. It is a room with no windows, no clocks, no mirrors. A room where nothing is asked of him, and nothing is given. A place where his dreams shrink into silence, and even his regrets lose their sharpness. He walks its halls now like a ghost, not realizing he is one. He picks up a book, but the pages are blank. He turns on the television, but the screen shows only a dim reflection of himself. He opens the window, but there is no wind, no sound, only her, watching, waiting, unmoving. She does not need to speak anymore. Her voice lives in the rhythm of his days. Her touch hides in the cold side of the bed. Her breath trails the light switch as he turns off the world each night. And slowly, piece by piece, he dissolves, not physically, but in spirit. The sharp corners of his identity, his passions, his stubbornness, all worn away, until he becomes smooth, predictable, silent, just the way she likes him. He still goes outside sometimes. He walks past people. He sees couples laugh, friends talk, children run. And he feels nothing. Not envy. Not longing. Only a distant ache, like remembering the face of someone you once knew, but cannot name. Because she has taken his hunger. She has replaced it with comfort. Not the comfort of joy, but the comfort of numbness, of safety, of never needing to try again. She makes him believe he is free. But he is not. He is caged by convenience, by fear, by the lie that solitude is safer than heartbreak. She does not chain him. She does not close the door. He could leave, if he wanted to. But that is the trick. He no longer wants to. She has become the voice that finishes his thoughts, the rhythm that fills his hours, the hand that rests on his shoulder in the dark. And he tells himself it is enough. That peace is better than passion. That isolation is better than intimacy. That quiet is better than chaos. And so he stays. Years pass, though he does not count them. Birthdays go by, forgotten. Opportunities appear, then vanish, untouched. People knock on his door less and less, until one day they stop completely. And he does not notice, because he has already stopped answering. He stares at the mirror sometimes, and the man who looks back seems familiar, but distant, as if he were watching a film of someone else's life. There is no fire in the eyes, no spark, only the faint glimmer of what once was, and even that is fading. She stands behind him, always, reflected faintly in the glass. Not a monster, not a demon, but something worse, something kind, understanding, patient. She smiles, because she knows the truth. She never needed to fight for him. He gave himself away, one excuse at a time. Too busy, too tired, too focused, too hurt. And now, there is nothing left to resist. He has forgotten how to crave touch, forgotten how to miss a voice, forgotten how to pray for love, forgotten how to be alive. She is all he knows, and soon all he is. Outside, the world spins wildly. Children grow. Friends change. Lovers fall in and out of each other's arms. It is loud, messy, terrifying, and beautiful. But he watches it like a man watching a storm from behind bulletproof glass. It cannot touch him, and he calls that safety. He tells himself he is lucky, that he avoided pain. But in truth, he avoided life. And now there is only this. A quiet apartment. A face in the mirror he does not recognize. And her. Always her. She will wait with him until the end. And when the last light fades, when the world forgets his name, she will carry what is left of him into the silence. And she will begin again, looking for the next man. The one who thinks solitude is strength. The one who mistakes walls for armor. The one who whispers, I do not need anyone, while secretly hoping someone will prove him wrong. She is already near him. He just does not see her yet. But she is patient. She always waits. And when he finally turns around, when the house is quiet and the screen is dark and the voices have all stopped calling, she will be there, smiling, with open arms, and silence for a name. And so, to every man who walks this world alone, thinking he is unbreakable, untouchable, immune, understand this. Loneliness is not the absence of people. It is the absence of connection, of meaning, of being seen. You may build walls. You may sharpen your solitude into pride. But behind those walls, something grows. Slowly, quietly, until it becomes your only companion. And by the time you realize what it has taken, it will already be too late. This is not a call to fear being alone. It is a call to feel, to open the door, to risk the mess of love, friendship, vulnerability. Because in that risk, you remain alive. You remain human. Do not wait until silence becomes your comfort. Do not wait until she becomes your home. Pick up the phone. Return the smile. Say yes to the coffee. Say yes to being known. Because strength is not in isolation. It is in the courage to connect. And the man who chooses to live fully, even when it hurts, he will never vanish into silence. He will never walk alone.